Hello everybody, welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. So today we're talking about Silent Running. That's a film from 1972, directed by Douglas Trumbull. He is mostly known for doing special effects for movies, but he did direct a film called Brainstorm, starring Christopher Walken from like 1983, which is probably worth checking out. I'll keep you posted on that. But he did tech for tons of films, for 2001: A Space Odyssey, Close Encounters, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, Blade Runner. So we've talked about him before, even on the channel with Blade Runner. He does really excellent work. And this is a really good movie. I really enjoyed this. I, of course, had seen it before, but Arrow Video put out that 4K, I guess maybe 6 to 12 months ago. A while back, they put out a 4K version of it, and it's definitely worth picking up. It's got all kinds of special features. It's really fun. It's a good disc. The film also stars Bruce Dern. Bruce Dern is one of those actors who's been in everything, but you can't really place where he was because he hasn't done anything really huge. You know, like this is kind of the biggest thing I think that he might have been in. I'm talking about the playing the lead in the film. He's been in everything. I'm going to read a couple things off the list here. From '69, he was in They Shoot Horses, Don't They? And then he did The Great Gatsby in '74. He was in Family Plot by Alfred Hitchcock in '76, which is awesome. He was in The Burbs in '89, a really silly comedy. The Burbs was put out during a writer's strike, so they basically improvised the entire film. It's a Tom Hanks film, and it is silly. It is crazy. It's an interesting film just to see for that reason. It looks like he was also in the TV series Big Love for HBO. And of course, he's the father of Laura Dern, who is the actress in Jurassic Park, among many, many, many other things. She's great. The score of the film was created by Peter Schickel. And Peter Schickel is also known as PDQ Bach, who is kind of a comedian who does classical music. So that's a very interesting combination to get for this film. The director was talking about it on the special features, and he said that he really liked the way that Joan Baez's albums were arranged. So he was looking through her albums, and his name kept popping up on her album covers. So he thought he'd contact him. So he contacted him and asked him to do the film, and of course he was very excited to do it. And then he asked, can you get Joan Baez? And he could. They ended up getting Joan Baez to do the film, and she actually sang 2 songs for the soundtrack. She didn't write the lyrics and she didn't write the music. She just sang them. And I think that's a very unique thing about the soundtrack to this film. So this film was greenlit under interesting circumstances. Easy Rider had come out a couple years earlier, and it did incredibly well considering how low the budget was. It was an independent film. It came out, it made tons of money. Hollywood was shocked. So the director was talking about the fact that the studio had decided to do 5 films, and each one of them would have $1 million budget. They would choose unknown directors and actors to do these films, and the directors had total artistic freedom. They wouldn't touch them in any way. They just wanted to cash in on the Easy Rider phenomenon, basically. And this was one of those 5 movies. So that's how this director basically got his start. Not in film, of course, because he started on 2001, obviously, with Stanley Kubrick. But it's how he got his start as a director. The film didn't do great. It's a cult classic. It's not some smash thing. The director attributes that to the fact that the studio didn't advertise the film, basically at all, because they wanted it to be like Easy Rider. They wanted word of mouth to be the thing that propelled it forward. So the director said it opened in many places without anyone even knowing what it was, which is too bad. I think it's a very good film. It's a strange film. It's a very strange film. There's a couple other unique facts about it that I want to talk about. Number one is the ship in the movie is called the Valley Forge. And the reason it's called that is because they because their budget was so small for making the film, they, instead of making any sets, they rented an aircraft carrier. There was an aircraft carrier called the Valley Forge, which had been through 2 or 3 different wars, and the United States government had decided to decommission it, and they were going to cut it up for scrap metal. And Hollywood called, and they said, sure, you can rent it from us. I think they said it was like $2,000 a week to rent the aircraft carrier. And the only restriction that they had, of course, aside from the fact that they couldn't sail it away, right? It had to stay where it was. But the only restriction that they had was they couldn't take any metal off the ship because they were going to cut it up for scrap metal. So they wanted all the metal to stay there, but they could make any changes to the ship that they wanted. So they rented this aircraft carrier called the Valley Forge, and they filmed most of the film in that aircraft carrier. Of course, they couldn't film the garden stuff in there because it's very cramped quarters. They had to rent an aircraft warehouse from an airport to do the garden stuff in. But all of the ship stuff they did on the Valley Forge. So they called the ship the Valley Forge, which was really cool. Also, the drones in this are very interesting. The director wanted the drones to appear very unnatural to the audience. And what I mean by that is he didn't just want to put a human in a suit, which of course is all they could do at the time, right? There was a little bit of puppetry, of course, and there was remote control a little bit, although they talked about the fact that they had a lot of problems with remote control on the ship because apparently the bulkheads were getting in the way of the signal, which I didn't really understand. I thought they'd be standing right next to it, but maybe they had to have some distance. I don't know. But they couldn't use a lot of remote control for them, and they didn't just want to put a human in a suit, even though that's exactly how they had to do it at the time. So what they decided to do was use people who didn't have legs. So they built these drones that are just a box with 2 arms, and the arms are what the drone uses to walk around with. It'll walk around and then set itself down. And they put people in suits, as they had to do at the time, who didn't have legs, so that when the average viewer watched it, they would think, that robot must be real because you couldn't fit a human in there. Right? Kind of a weird topic, but I'm not positive how successful it actually was. I think at the time it must have been amazing. This is 72, right? I was 2 years old. I have no idea. When I watch it, it just looks really clumsy, and I just assume puppet or remote control. So I'm not positive. I think the idea was interesting, but I'm not positive how it actually worked, how effective it truly was. But that was just an interesting fact about it. All right, so just kind of no spoilers here. This is just going to be kind of a basic overview of the plot. Silent Running is that movie where the guy is in charge of a garden in space. There's a spaceship with a huge dome, and there's a garden in it, and there's a guy who's supposed to take care of it. And that dome represents the only plant life left in the solar system. Earth can no longer sustain plant life. That's why they put this dome into space, was so that someone could take care of the plants until Earth could heal itself, and then they bring the plants back down. Well, it's been about 8 years. He's been in space for 8 years taking care of these plants, and they decide to scrap the whole thing. They want to jettison the dome, and they want to nuke it, just destroy it, and they want the ship that they're using to hold the dome to come back down to American Airlines. The company, there's a huge sticker on the side of the ship, American Airlines, which I thought was kind of cynical and fun. I thought that was a nice twist to make it a corporate ship. And the corporation decides they want their ship back. They're tired of this. There's actually 8 of them up there, and they have like 4 domes each, or maybe 6 domes. There's a lot of domes up there, and there's a lot of ships, and American Airlines wants their ships back. So, of course, That's what causes the conflict. The person who's been taking care of the garden doesn't want to destroy the garden because he knows it's the last garden in the solar system. And I recommend this. I really do. If you like old sci-fi, I think this is a good film. It's very, very different. It's not Logan's Run. It's not Star Wars. It's very hard to classify this thing, and I think that's why it's become its own little cult classic. It's kind of obscure. The Wikipedia refers to it as an environmentally themed science fiction film. I mean, the message about the environment and the songs with Joan Baez singing, everything is very geared toward the environment. But I do recommend it. I think it's very good. So now I'm going to kind of do a deep dive into it. There's going to be spoilers, so beware. If you haven't seen it and you want to just watch it and enjoy it, you absolutely should. Just stop the video, watch it. You can come back and watch this because it's fun, but watch the movie. They cast Bruce Dern. Now, Bruce Dern is a great actor. He's been nominated for a couple Academy Awards for Best Supporting Actor and for Best Actor. He started off as one of the actors in the Actors Studio, which is a very famous theater in America. He's a big deal. He's very good. But his type is the bad guy. That's what he normally does, is he plays the bad guy. And this film does a very, very interesting thing. The film was written by the people who did Deer Hunter. The Deer Hunter, of course, was put out in 1978. It's way after this, but that gives you an idea of the anger and the violence that this script has. And Bruce Dern is such an interesting choice because you've got these four guys. You got three bullies and a gardener. And the bullies are constantly picking on the gardener. But the gardener is psychotic. Like, watching Bruce Dern talk to these guys it's uncomfortable. It's kind of scary. Like, his character is scary. And you can easily make an argument that it's supposed to be scary. He kills them. He kills all three of them. Right? Now, he's doing it to save all the plant life. But it's this interesting, weird thing because casting him makes you question his motives. It makes you wonder about his arc. Because the basic arc of the film is he has to kill these people that he works with to save the last plant life. He feels like he has no choice because nuking it all is just pure insanity. Sorry, I have a cat here who's being a little bit distracting. This is midnight. Midnight. So if you had a weak gardener who was forced into this situation, this terrible situation, because of the stakes of losing all these plants, then in the end, when he commits suicide, that arc makes total sense to an average audience member. But having this really scary, crazy guy, I mean, he's like Nick Cage, I swear. He's a stage actor. So his performance is a little bit larger than life as it is. And on top of that, he's a big guy. He's bigger than all of them. So to make them bully him and to see him as this boiling pot of rage, it creates this weird arc of he kills them because he has to, but then it kind of weighs on him that he did that, and he's going a little bit stir crazy because he's alone in this ship. So then when he decides to nuke himself, it's more to save the plants, and it's just interesting. It's an interesting, weird choice. It's not the norm. And I do think that's what the studio was looking for at the time. I'm not positive it was the best choice. Not because it's Bruce Dern. Bruce Dern is a really good actor, like I'm saying, but just because it goes against what the director wanted the script to say. The original script, so the two people who did Deer Hunter worked on the script, they submitted it, and then they got a third person to come in and work on it a bit, and then the director worked on it a bit. So it went through lots of stages. The first script was very violent. The Bruce Dern character was a drunkard. He didn't care about anything, but then when they decided to nuke the gardens, he suddenly had feelings about it and this rage, and he was drunk, and he killed him. And then he's stuck alone for all this time, and it just eats away at him, and he ends up surrendering. He ends up surrendering to a gunship and losing the forest and just giving everything up because he can't handle it anymore, which is a different story. And Bruce Dern might have fit that story a little bit better as a Hollywood stereotype. But the way the director tried to make it this very friendly, peace-loving thing is really interesting. So you've got this kind of violent, crazy script, that's been reworked. And you've got this violent, crazy actor. But then on this side, you've got these droids. And the droids are very lovable. He spends a lot of time with them. He plays cards with them. One of them accidentally gets killed in space, and you feel really bad for it, right? Its leg gets ripped off, and it gets pulled off into space because it couldn't keep up with the other droids because his foot got stuck. They're very lovable. And then you've got this soundtrack. And the soundtrack score is just fine. It's not remarkable. It's not terrible. It just kind of fits the movie. But the two Joan Baez tunes are they're like the music from the cartoon The Hobbit. Sorry, got another cat here. This is Chaplin. What are you doing here? Why are you guys bugging me tonight? I don't know if you've seen the cartoon version of The Hobbit from back in the 70s, but it has very folk-oriented music. And Joan Baez, of course, is that way as well. I mean, it's not like something bad happened. It just doesn't match. It's such a strange... Like, if you put that kind of music to Easy Rider, it would just clash, And I feel like that's kind of what's happening here. We've got really kind of old school ideas and kind of new school ideas trying to mesh together in this movie. And it creates this really interesting, weird feel, which is not terrible. It's just very strange. So, he kills the people. He takes the ship around Saturn to the dark side of Saturn, and he makes it look like there was an explosion. He vents some debris so that the rescue crew that's coming for him can see the debris, and he can say, "I had an explosion, it's terrible." And they're like, "Oh no, you're going to crash into the rings and die. The ship can't handle the rings." And he's like, "Okay, bye." Right? And his leg was hurt while he was killing them, and the robots do a surgery on his leg, and he passes out, and he flies into the rings, which I found very strange because the ship's fine. He has total control over the ship. Maybe he was delirious because his leg was hurt and he had to get it sewn up with the robots, but I don't know. He flies it into the rings, and there is no damage to the ship. Now, they do lose one of the drones. That's where the drone gets his leg ripped off and flies into space. But that was such a weird choice, I thought. I don't know if the director just wanted to show off some sci-fi effects. They don't do chunks of ice. They do these weird gaseous colors that they're flying through. And there's a big wind sound, and the robots are like, So maybe they just wanted to show that off. I don't know. I feel like flying the ship into the rings and not having it be destroyed was a very weird choice. But he comes out of the rings just fine, and he goes flying off into space. So then you go into this big sequence of him being stuck alone. And I do think it's an important part of the film. But it feels like a bunch of little adventures, not like a continuous arc, right? You've got like the card playing sequence with the robot, and you've got I've stopped eating natural food and I'm starting to eat the processed food that came on the ship because I'm stuck here all alone. And then he realizes, why am I eating this? And he goes and eats more food out of the garden. You've got that sequence. You've got the sequence where he's trying to teach the robots to take care of the garden. You know, it's all important. It's all interesting. It's just weird that it doesn't have a build. I don't think it would matter what order those sequences were put in because they don't build to any kind of a climax on their own. And it's just interesting watching Bruce Dern, of course, right? So all you can do is sit there and wonder, when is this guy going to crack? And when he does, what is he going to do? Because this guy's insane. But it's trying to be really sweet. He gives the robot names. So you go through that sequence, and then a rescue party catches up to him, and he realizes that really the only way he can save the forest is to destroy the ship he's on. As long as the ship exists, they will chase him. So he needs to destroy the ship. So he jettisons the pod with all the plant life in it. He leaves one robot in there to take care of all the plants, and he just shoots it off into space. And then he and the other robots stay on the ship, and he nukes the ship. And that's how it ends. And I like that. I feel like that ending makes sense. The director had talked about his original idea was that it was going to be a first contact story, that it would be a gardener in space who feels like he's going stir crazy, but in his dreams, he starts meeting this alien culture. And to be honest with you, that sounds pretty dang cool. I almost kind of wish I could have seen that instead of what we did see, because I feel like they still could have incorporated the fact that humans had destroyed this and that they wanted to destroy the plants, but the aliens wanted to keep the plants because they knew how valuable they were and he knew how valuable they were. Like, I feel like they could have kept all that going. And it's too bad that that just got stripped away from it totally, because that's a very interesting subject. But I do recommend this movie. It is a good movie. I had fun watching it. If you like older sci-fi, you've got to have it in your collection, right? If you have like Rollerball and Death Race and Logan's Run and Westworld, you got to have Silent Running. Of course, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoy this. If you do, hit the like button. If you want to see more like it, make sure to subscribe and have a great day.